Okay, today's daf is daf Chaf Aleph, and we're going to begin daf Chaf Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. It's a very straightforward daf. Once again, a lot of this in Masechta Moed Katan is very straightforward. The daf, in other words, there's a lot of halachas on the page. So we learned yesterday the concept of that if somebody is sitting shiva. If somebody that you would have sat shiva had they died, if they're sitting shiva, you would also have to sit shiva. So the Gemara tells a story. Ameimar. Okay, 3 lines from the bottom. Ameimar. Get it larger. Ameimar shechav le barbre. His grandson passed away. So that means the Rameimar's son is going to be sitting shiva. Hold on. Hi, Sheldon.
Hi, how are
Hi,
you?
we just began. We're on the Chaf Aleph. We're starting from Chaf Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom, Ameimar. So the Gemara says, Ameimar shchav le barbre. His grandson, Ameimar's grandson, passed away. So his son is going to sit shiva over here. So Kare Alave, he ripped his clothing. He tore kriya because his grandson passed away. And then Asabre and his son came around, and his son met his father. And Kara Ba'ape, Amema re-tore a clothing again in front of his son, because he figured that the first time he did it, it was wrong. He should have, if you're gonna tear kriya, you should do it in front of the person that really is supposed to tear kriya, which is the father of the child. So he figured he did it wrong. And he retore again when his son came to him. And then all of a sudden, Itka de Miyushav Kara. Ameima remembered that he tore his clothing, but he was sitting when he tore it. And the halacha is, you have to tear, when you do kriya, you have to stand. So what happened here is, Kam, Kra, Mu'umad. He retore his clothing. He's retore his clothing standing up. Okay. Hi, Lewis. We just began 3 lines from the bottom, Chaf Amud Beis. So the Gemara just gave us a new halacha. Again, most of Moed Katan is giving straight halachas. That when you do kriya on an avel, if you for avelis, you have to do the kriya, the ripping. You have to be standing. Amalei Ravashi Lameima. So Ravashi said to Rameya, Meimar kriya dem umad menolan. What is the source that kriya has to be done standing, while you're standing? So the answer is, Tiksiv, in Tanakh, it says by Eov, Vayokom Eov, Vayikra Esmi Eloi. Eov, Loyalenu, as you know the story of Job, he lost all his wealth and his children. And when he lost his children, he got up and tore his cloak. So we see that when you do kriya, you have to be standing when you're doing it. Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. So the Gemara asks the question, Elamiyat, if that is correct, what you're driving at, whenever it says you get up, it means you have to stand. By Chalitza, it says, V'amad v'amar loy chafatzti lekachta. When a man says that he does not want to marry the Yibam, as you know, when the wife of his brother, his brother died, and the wife falls Yibam, if he doesn't want to marry her, he has to say, I don't want to take this woman, and she performs chalitza on him, which means she takes off his shoe and spits into the shoe. So if he stands and says loy chafatzti lekachta, he has to stand and say, hachanami, will you say that for Yibam you also have to stand? For Nanya, we learned in a brisa, bein yoshev, bein oimed, bein muta. You can say this statement, loy chafatzti lekachta, whether you're sitting, standing, or leaning on the side. Don't take it so seriously when it says va'amad. So how come by Eov, when it says he got up and tore his clothing, you're taking it very seriously that you have to stand when you do kriya? So the answer is that in Tanakh language, sometimes it means a directive and sometimes it's an expression. The Gemara says like this, Amalei. So Ravashi Ameima answered, Hosum loik siv vayamoy vayoymar. It doesn't say by Chalitza, and he stood and he said. That means if it says vayamoid, it means that he has to stand and say. So, but it says the word va'amad. Like in English, you could take a stand on something. When I take an opinion, I take a stand on something. It doesn't mean I'm standing. That's an opinion. So that's what va'amad means. He takes a stand that he doesn't want to take this woman, but doesn't mean you're physically standing. But by the pasuk of kriya, of ripping, it says vayakom, he got up, vayikra, and he tore. So vayakom is more of a directive that he did it because he had to change his position of where he was. Iyov was sitting and he got up to do the kriya. From there, you know the halacha, you have to stand when you do the kriya. Amar Rabbi Bar Chama said, Minayin lekriya shehi mu'umad. How do I know kriya is said standing? Shenema, it says in the pasuk, Vayokom Iyov vayikra. Iyov got up and stand. So that was Rami Bar Chama said the same source. So the Gemara asks a question. They asked on Rami Bar Chama, Dilma milsi yaserta hu de'avid. Maybe Iyov did an extra thing. You don't have to stand to do the kriya, but it was just an extra touch that Iyov did. Why? If you're not going to say that, Iyov did something else, which we never do when you're an aval. When he found out of the death of his children, the pasuk says he ripped his hair out of his head. So obviously we don't do that. So hachanami, why don't you say the same thing over here? That vayokom Iyov means he happened to stand, but that's not min hadin that you're supposed to stand. Ella mahacha, we have another source that you have to stand. David HaMelech heard about his children, that Avshalom killed Amnon, and he thought one of his children died, and he was going to sit shiva. Vayokam HaMelech, the king got up, Vayikras B'dadav, and he tore his clothing. So there you see clear that he got up to do the kriya. So the Gemara says, same question. V'dilma milsi yaseris of it. Maybe David HaMelech did an extra thing. He didn't have to stand. Because in the other things that he did, if you look at that pasuk, if you're not going to say so, Vayishkav Arza, he lied on the ground, and obviously, when he lied on the ground, that was not correct. When a person's at aval, during minatayra, the way we established avelis is you're not supposed to sit on the floor. You're actually supposed to sit on an overturned bed. Their ancient beds, you had to overturn it to demonstrate, as we learned before, that humans generally overturn the Tselem Elokim. God gave them a special soul and a special self-esteem, so to speak, and a person, we turn it over. So that's why you're supposed to sit on an overturned bed. And here the pasuk says David HaMelech sat on the ground. So obviously David HaMelech didn't follow the exact halacha. Because how could you sit on the ground? V'hatanya, we learned in a brayso, Yoshev al gabi mita, if you sit on the bed, al gabi kisa, on a chair, al gabi udyane, on a rock, lo yotzi de chavosoi, you're not yoitze. And we have in the parentheses, gedoyle al gab karka. Even if you sat on the ground, you're not yoitze the din avelis. Why? The most important part of demonstrating that you're an oval is taking those beds and turning it over. And that's and sitting on that bed. So you have to sit on something that makes you sink to the ground. So how could you say, so since that part of the pasuk, David HaMelech, he didn't follow the halacha. So maybe the getting up and doing the kriya is only an extra thing, but you really don't have to do that min adin. Amalei, so they answered back to Rami Bar Chama, Ke'ein Arza. What it means is that, it doesn't mean David HaMelech sat on the ground. He actually sat near the ground, because when you overturn the bed, the springs, and you sit on that, the springs will sink you almost touching the ground. So that was what he did. So therefore, it was the right thing to do of a Yishkav Arza, So since that part of the pasuk, he did exactly what you're supposed to do. Vayakam v'melech vayikras b'gadav was also what you're supposed to do. Tanur Rabbanim. Again, here comes straightforward halachas, but interesting stories. Tanur Rabbanim. Elu devarim she'aval asur behem. The following is a list of things that aval is not permitted to do. Asur ben malacha, he's not allowed to go to work. Okay, if he has a store, he can't go to work to sell things. Urechitza is not allowed to take a bath. Uvesicha is not allowed to anoint himself. Uvetashma shamita and be with his wife. Uvenilas hasandal, he's not allowed to wear shoes. Right. also, I mean, these are the Bryce is just listing things you're prohibited of doing. As you know, we learned before that in Minhadin, an oval is supposed to have a turned over bed, and also he has to wrap his face with a shawl, like with a mask. He's not allowed to read Torah, Nevuim, Iksuvim. V'lishnois b'mishnah. He can't read Mishnayos, b'medrash, u'b'halachos, u'b'talmud, u'v'agados. He can't do any of these things. Lishnois means Talmud wasn't written down, so you had to sharpen your tongue to recall it from memory and talk about the drushes of the psukim. So he's also basically he's not permitted to learn any Torah. And if, let's say, he's such a hush of a person, let's say he's the Nasi, the president, and he's normally the one leading the shir, so he's very important. So, and because if he's not going to give the shir, nobody's going to do the learning. Ein nimna, he shouldn't stop himself from teaching Torah. Umaisa was the story. Umais benoi shall Rabbi Yossi bitzipare. Rabbi Yossi lost his son, Le'aleinu. And right away, it's amazing the self-control these people had. V'nichnas lebeis medrash. He went into the beis medrash. V'darash kol yom kulei, and he gave a whole lecture the whole entire day. Then the Gemara says, I just point out to you, although it says here in the Gemara that an oval is not allowed to learn Torah, does that mean an oval can't learn any part of Torah? So I just point to you Tosfos that says, very interesting, from Tshuvas Rabbeinu Yitzchak Zakeni in the Tosfos V'asher Likras Divrei Torah, he says Rabbeinu Yankov, when he was younger, he asked every oval to learn anything, even the sad parts of Torah, like Iyuv, Kinnis, things that you would normally be allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av, you can't learn. An oval, no Torah. Then when he got older, he retracted that psak and he gave a heter that you could learn stuff when you're an oval, almost similar to what you would be able to learn on Tisha B'Av, you're allowed to learn when you're an oval. But it's probably, I mean, some people would not learn when they're an oval, because on Tisha B'Av, you're learning about the destruction of the temple, which is Inyone de Yoima, things it's about the day. But when you're a person who's an oval, there's really nothing to learn. So some will not learn anything when they're an oval. Now the Gemara says a story, again, similar story before. Rabba Bar Chana, Isrei Bil Milsa. Rabba Bar Chana, something bad happened, and he was sitting Shiva. He didn't want to teach the Torah. He didn't want to give the shir. Amalei Rab Chanina said, if many people need you, you're the only one that knows how to give a shir. You shouldn't hold back from giving the shir. So he wanted to put a meturgamim. They used to have, the rabbi would give the shir, but he didn't have that powerful voice, and he didn't have the command of the language that the people spoke. He gave the shir in Hebrew, but the Arabic language, he didn't have that command. So he would say the shir, and the meturgaman would listen to what the rabbi said, and then translate it and give it over to the people. So once you gave Rabba Bar Chana permission while he's a novel to give a shir, he wanted to have a meturgamim at his side. Amalei Rav, no, that far we're not going. Tanya uvach lo ya meturgaman. He can't have a meturgamim at your side. What should you do? I mean, how could you give a shir without a meturgamim? Nobody's going to understand the rabbi. He's only speaking in Hebrew. They didn't know Hebrew. So what do you do? Tanya, we have a brisa that gives you the advice of what to do. One time, the son of Rabbi Yehuda ben Eloi passed on, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Eloi obviously is needed, and he needs to go give the shir. The nichnas lebeis medrash went into the beis medrash. The nichnas Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya the Yosha betzidai, and Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya sat right next to Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi. V'lachash hu l'Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya. Rabbi Yehuda ben Eloi whispered the shir to Rabbi Chananya bar Akavya, and then Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya whispered or said the shir out loud, l'turgamim, for the turgamim, the loudspeaker, the human loudspeaker. The Turgamin Ishmael Rabim, the Turgamin gave the speech to the many, so to the crowd. So basically, instead of having the Turgamin right next to Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eloi, they had a buffer of somebody else, Rabbi Hananya ben Akavia. Rabbi Yehuda ben Eloi gave the shir to Rabbi Hananya ben Akavia. Rabbi Hananya ben Akavia said the shir again, and the Turgamin then loud spoke the whole shir to the crowd and even translated it. New Gemara, Tana Rabbanim. What you should know is what we're going to learn here is that the 3 days of Avelis have something different than the Shiva, than the rest of the 7. The first 3 days that a soul passes, basically, the soul thinks that it's still alive and tries to re-enter the body. So because of that, Avelis of the first 3 days are more severe than the next few days. That's what we say. And also it's an inyan that the mourner should be crying harder during the first 3 days. So the rabbis taught an Avel, Gimel Yomim Rishonim also leniach tefillin. The first 3 days you're not supposed to put on tefillin. Mishalishi ve'elech, but on the 3rd day on, Ushlishi b'chlal, and the 3rd day on the 3rd day itself, you can start putting on tefillin. Mutar leniach tefillin, because you say miktzas hayom kekulei. So the first 2 days plus you don't put on tefillin. The 3rd day you let a little time pass and then you put your tefillin on. Then so that's one din. This Tana is saying his name is Rabbi Loza. The other says another point is Vimbol Panim Chadash. If somebody came to visit you on the 3rd day and you're wearing your tefillin, remember they used to wear their tefillin all day. So if somebody came to menachem him and was not there the first 2 days, Eina Choylitz, you don't have to take off your tefillin. Divrei Rabbi Loza, because you would think that you have to take off your tefillin because if the person sees you with the tefillin on and he doesn't know what happened the first 2 days, he'll think that you wore your tefillin on the first 2 days of Avelis. So in order somebody shouldn't come to the wrong conclusion, I would think you should take off your tefillin. So Rabbi Lezer says you don't have to take off your tefillin. So he said 2 things. One, you start putting your tefillin on the 3rd day, and also you don't have to take it off when somebody new comes to visit you. Rabbi Yeshua says, Ovel, Beis Yomim Harishainim, on the first 2 days, Asa laniach tefillin. One is not permitted to put on tefillin. Misheni b'chlal, mutar laniach tefillin. That's what we paskin. That the first day of Avelis. Now we're not talking about aninas. We're talking about you buried the dead. That day you shouldn't put on your tefillin. The next day, because the main Avelis is 1 day. The next day in the morning, wait a little bit, and you're supposed to put it on a tefillin. The imbo panim chadashes, if a brand new face comes, choylitz, you take off the tefillin, because that person is going to think that if you're putting on tefillin on the 2nd day, he will think you put the tefillin also on the 1st day, but the 1st day you're not supposed to put on tefillin. So therefore, that's the halacha. I will point out that this is one of those halachas I don't think many people keep. In other words, Medina de Gemara, you're supposed to, the first day of Avelis, you shouldn't put on tefillin. And yet people will come home from the Levaya after burying somebody. I'm not sure why. I know I did. And you put on your tefillin. And Medina de Gemara, you're not supposed to. So I'm not sure. So Omer Rav Matana, my time at Rabbi Lazar. What is the reason of Rabbi Lazar that he holds that really 2 days of Avelis is the main thing, and therefore on the 3rd day you put on your tefillin. The pasuk says, "Vayitmu yemei bechi evel Moshe." It ended the days of crying for Moshe. Days, the limited amount of plural days is 2. So you see that Avelis is only 2 days. Amar Rav Eina, my time Rabbi Yeshua. What is the reason of Rabbi Yeshua? The ksiv, because the pasuk says, "V'achrisa," your end will be kiyoim mar, that bitter day. So it's implying about, if you look in the context of that pasuk, it's implying of Avelis is a 1-day affair. That's why Rabbi Yeshua holds on day number 2, you can put on your tefillin. For Rabbi Yeshua, Nami Aksiv Vayitmu Yemei. Why? What does he do with the pasuk of Yemei Bechi Evel Moshe, which implies that there's Avelis is 2 days? Malach, he will say Shani Moshe the Takif Evelay. That when you're dealing with Moshe Rabbeinu, you want to get an extra day. Moshe Rabbeinu dying, it's a stronger type of Avelis, so it's a 2-day Avel. But everybody else, it's a 1-day Avelis. Rabbi Lezer Nami Haksiv Achrisa Kiamar. It says that Avelis is 1 day. So he says really Avelis is 2 days. The intensity is 2 days, but even the first the most bitter day is that one day. The main bitterness of losing someone is that one day. So basically, we had a new type of opinion. In our Mishnah, it says 3 days of Avelis is important. Now we have opinions that are saying 2 days of Avelis are important, that you don't put on tefillin. And then we have the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua, which is 1 day of Avelis, you don't put on your tefillin. Amma Ula said, halacha Rabbi Lazar b'chalitza, halacha Rabbi Yeshua b'hanacha. He says the halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua when you're putting on your tefillin, that you put on your tefillin on day number 2 of Avelis. But the halacha is like Rabbi Lazar, that if someone comes to visit you, you don't have to take off your tefillin. That's what he says. I'm pointing out that min hadin, let's say you don't put on min hadin, the first day that a person's an oval, they have the minyan the second day, right? They have the shachris minyan. So the oval should put on his tefillin prior to coming downstairs. Because if people bin hadin, the halacha is that as if you didn't put on your tefillin and there's panim chadashas, you have people who didn't show up to the levaya or weren't there yesterday. So panim chadashas would not allow you to put on your tefillin. But if you have it on, you don't have to take it off. Because the halacha is like Rabbi Lazar, you never have to take off your tefillin. If a panim chadashas, a new face comes, you don't have to take off your tefillin. Although the halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua, that you can put on your tefillin on the second day. You don't have on the second day. That was Ula's psak. Ula, the Gemara asks the question, B'sheni le'ula, choylitz or eina choylitz? On the second day of Ula, does Ula hold that you should take off your tefillin when a new panim chadashas comes or not? Because if you're pasking like Rabbi Lazar, the idea of not taking off your tefillin when a person comes is only because Rabbi Lazar holds you start putting your tefillin on the third day. What about the second day? What would Ula hold? Tashma, Alma Ula, choylitz amaniach afila me'apamim. Taka, you would take off your tefillin even 100 times. If new panim chadashas keep coming visiting you on day number 2 and you're wearing your tefillin, you have to take it off your tefillin and put it, and then when they leave, you put it back on. So, but by the third day, you don't have to take off your tefillin. Tanya nami hachi Yehuda ben Tema Oima afilu choylitz meniach afila me'apamim. You may have to take off your tefillin and put it back on 100 times if you have new people coming. But Rava says, Kevin sheniach, if you put on your tefillin before the new faces came to visit you, you don't have to take off your tefillin. So Rava applies that you start putting your tefillin like Rabbi Yeshua on day number 2, and that once somebody visits you, you don't have to take off your tefillin. So the Gemara asks, Rava paskin like our Mishnah that Avelis is 3 days. So according to Rava, technically, you should only put your tefillin on day number 4, which is the 4th day of Avelis. That's what Rava paskin like our Mishnah. We go to Chaf Aleph on the base, mitzvah shani. Yes, Rava paskins like our Mishnah regarding turning over the bed and being noyeg Avelis for 3 days. That's very important. But the tefillin, he because it's a mitzvah, there's a mitzvah to put on the tefillin, so then you could put it already right away on the second day. New halachas. Again, this dealing with that first 3 days, the first 3 days after someone passes, the neshama is somewhere is around where the oval is sitting. So Tanur Rabbanan, oval. Gimel Yaman Rishonim, the first 3 days, also b'mlacha. He can't go to work. Let's say he's so poor, he needs the money. We tell him, take tzedakah, but don't go to work the first 3 days. But after day number 3 of Avelis, if you really, really need the money, so then you could go to work. We don't force you to take tzedakah. So you can work privately in your house. If you're an accountant, whatever, you can work in your house, and that's okay. But it's after the first 3 days. But Isha, Isha who needs the money, she's also permitted to spin with a spindle in her house, which is a private way of doing work if she needs the money. Only if they need the money. Tanur Rabbanan, another halacha. Aval Gimel Yarmer Shainim, the first 3 days. Now, we're accustomed when a person's an Aval Loyaleni, he never leaves his house. But Medina the Gemara doesn't say you can't leave your house. So the Gemara says, Aval Gimel Yarmer Shainim, the first 3 days a person's shitting Shiva, you're really supposed to cry hard for the mace. You can't go visit somebody else's shitting Shiva. But after the first 3 days, if you know, let's say your neighbor is sitting Shiva also, and you already sat for 3 days, you can go. and sit with him and be with more of a crowd. You can't sit on the place where the visitors are coming. You sit with the other mourners that are being visited by. That's where you should sit. But you permitted to go to somebody else's house after the first 3 days. Again, that's Medina de Gemara. I don't think anybody, when they're sitting Shiva, leaves their own home. We know you're not supposed to ask Shalom, say hello to people. So the Gemara says, Avel Gimel Yamim Rishayim, the first 3 days, Osir B'Sheila Shalom. He's not allowed to say hello to anybody. Mishloisha Yamim at Shiva, from 3 to 7, Meishiv Einik Shoyel. If someone asks, hello, how you doing? He can answer, but he can't ask the other person how they're doing. But after Shiva, Shoyel Umeishiv Kedarkai. You could ask, and he could ask how somebody else is doing, and if somebody asks him, he can answer normally, Kedarkai, the normal way. Because once Shiva is over, you can say the normal polite greetings. So the Gemara asks a very interesting question and tells a story. Again, one of those fascinating stories in the Gemara. You said Shloishis Rishonim, the first 3 days, also b'sheila shalom. You cannot ask how somebody's doing. Say Shalom Aleichem. And also, when your person says Shalom Aleichem, it's not only just asking how they're doing, but it's almost like a blessing. You're wishing them well, Shalom. So you're telling me that the first 3 days when a person's sitting Shiva, you can't wish somebody well, Shalom. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, unbelievable. 2 sons of Rabbi Akiva died at one time. So maybe there was an accident or something. So Nichnesnu Kol Yisrael, the entire Jewish world came, Vespidim Hesped Gadol. It was a large Levaya, and they gave a big Hesped. B'shas Pitirasa. And you see the humility of Rabbi Akiva. He says, when the people were going home, Amad Rabbi Akiva al Safsul Gadol. He stood on a large bench, a high place. And he made an announcement. He was so grateful that people came for his children's levaya. He said, Achenu Beis Yisrael Shimu. My brother, you family of the Jews, hear me out. My children were not married, so it's less of a hurt, a pain. But afilu shnei bonim chasanim, even if my 2 children were like married, when you lose lo yaleinu, a married child, it's terrible. Even if my 2 children were married, I would have found comfort with this honor that you brought to me, that everybody showed up for this levaya. I'm so grateful that all of you came. Now, he said, I'm trying to figure out why you came. If you came because my name is Akiva, and what he's trying to say is Akiva was a wealthy person. Although in the beginning of his marriage, his father-in-law didn't have what to do with him because he was learning, but in the end they made up, and he inherited a lot of money. So if you came because I'm a wealthy man, still I'm not the wealthiest. Hare kama akiva b'shuk. There are many other akivas in the street. You could have gone to any levaya. Elakach amartem. I thought to myself, the reason why you came is because in my soul I have a lot of Torah. Torah is elakav b'libay. The Torah of God is in his heart. So the kolshkeim seschartem kafel. You have a double reward, because I guess he came to Levaya for 2 people. So lechu lebatechem l'shalom. Go, everybody should go home, and I wish you all shalom. So what do you see? Right, the day of the Levaya, the first day of Avelis, Rabbi Akiva is wishing everybody shalom. And you just told me that at Avel, the first 3 days, he shouldn't wish anybody shalom. Answers the Gemara, Kavoid Rabim Shani. Since there was a large group of people, Klal Yisrael, so therefore that's different. Yeah, you're wishing an entire group, that's permitted. Then we said in the Brisa, Megimel Vad Zayin, Meishiv Eina Shoyel, Mekam Ve'elach Shoyel Meishiv Kedarka. So you said from 3 to 7, he can answer but not ask, and from afterwards, he could. After Shiva, it's back to normal. After Shiva, it's back to normal. Is it after Shiva back to normal? Raminu, I'll ask you a stira, contradiction. The Brisa says, Hamoitzis Chavera Oval, if you find your friend in Avelis, during the first 30 days, you talk to him and you try to comfort him. And you don't ask how he's doing. After 30 days, you could ask how he's doing. And you don't speak with him words of comfort because it's after 30. So we see from here in this brisa that the key number is not Shiva. The key number is 30 days. After 30 days, then you could start, saying shalom to each other. And the brisa before said, no, after Shiva, you could start saying hello. The Gemara just finishes off the brisa, and the brisa says, what happens? Mesa Ishta, a person's wife died. And right away, in the first 30 days, he married somebody else, Menashe Isha Acheres, because either he had no children or he had young children at home, and therefore he needed somebody to marry, somebody quick to help with the kids in the house. So therefore, somebody who's coming to Menachem Oval for his first wife, you can't go into this guy's house. He's married to somebody else, and that other woman is going to feel uncomfortable. It's like when they say when somebody remarries, he shouldn't have pictures around the house of his first wife. Same idea that Menachem, the guy just got married. You shouldn't go into his house and give him Menichem Avelim about his first wife that died. The Dabe bin Tachumim. What should you do? If you find him on the street, you speak to him softly and a heavy heart. You don't mention the first wife. But that ends the brisa. But the point of the brisa is that the key number of when can you start saying shalom to each other is after 30. And the previous brisa says it's after 7. So how do you resolve that? He's allowed to ask after 7 days, he can ask somebody else and wish somebody else shalom. Because the other people that he's asking about are already b'shalom. But acherim ain't shalom b'shalom. They can't ask how he's doing until after shloishim. Shuhu eina sharui b'shalom. He's not in peace, so they shouldn't be asking. There, the key number is 30. After 30, they can ask him shalom or wish him shalom. Him, after 7, he can wish other people shalom. So the Gemara says, since it says in the Brisa that when it's between 3 and 7 days, shoyel umeshiv, or after 7, shoyel umeshiv, it seems that people are saying shalom to him. After 7 days, they're saying shalom, and he's answering, thank you. Answers the Gemara. That part of the Brisa that says people are saying hello to him is the lo yodi. They didn't know that he's an aval. So if that's the case, so therefore he doesn't have to stop them. If they want to wish him shalom, after 7, he could say it's okay. If that's the case, hasam nami. So then by the first 3 days, why can't he say umeshiv? If people don't know, why do you have to stop them and say by the first 3 days? If they're saying hello to you, why didn't you answer back? There, the first 3 days, again, are stricter. So if someone would say hello to the person and doesn't know that he's an aval, let's say he's not wearing his mask or whatever, so then he has to tell him, I can't answer you back, and acknowledge your greeting of shalom to me because I'm an aval. He doesn't have to, he tells him I'm an aval and doesn't answer a greeting back, shalom to you. But from after Shiva, if someone comes to him and say hello, he's allowed to say hello back and wish the other person well. He doesn't have to let the other person know that he was an aval. Again, but if you know he's an aval, according to what the Gemara is saying now, is that you shouldn't wish him shalom until after 30 days. Now the Gemara asks, and with this will end. I'll ask you one last contradiction. The Mishnah, so you're telling me the key number is 30. Here, look at this brisa. You find your friend in aval. So if it's within 12 months, you can speak words of comfort. You can't even say hello to him. You mean not after 30 days, after 4 months, you still can't say hello to him and wish him shalom. Only after the 12 months, shoyel b'shloimi, you could ask how he's doing and wish him well, shalom. You can't speak words of comfort because it's 12 months gone, and we don't want to remind him about his avelis. You can speak in a. You just mention it briefly. In other words, you can say, I'm wishing you Menachem Eschem, but don't mention the dead person's name. So you can, after Yud Beis Chodesh, you could say you should find comfort, but don't mention anything about the dead person. And Rab Meir explains it further. If after Yud Beis Chodesh, you should not bring up the person's loss. Amar Rab Meir, Hamaitzi, as Rab Meir said, Hamaitzi is Chaveira Oval Achi Yud Beis Chodesh. You find your friend in Oval after 12 months, right? Umedabe iman tachumen, and you start speaking about words of comfort. It's already 12 months since the person passed on. I'll give you an example. What's that's compared to? A person who broke his foot and then healed, so he doesn't think about his foot. So his doctor comes and sees, he says to him, come to my office. I'm going to re-break your foot again. I'm going to heal it. So you should know that I have good medicine for it. I mean, the guy has a fixed leg, his leg healed already. You want to break it to prove that you're a good doctor. So same thing over here. You might be the best guy to give Menachem Oval, but if it's after 12 months, don't bring it up. It's already, the person's healed, should be healed after 12 months from his loss. But the bottom line question over here is that we see that even while it's during the 12 months, the Brisa says, you're not supposed to ask how he's doing. And the previous prices said, no, after 30 days, you could start asking how he's doing. How do you resolve that contradiction? So the Gemara answers, like Kasha, it's not difficult. If the person just lost his father and mother, you're not allowed to ask, say, She'ilah Shalom to him, even for 12 months. B'shar Kroivim. By other relatives, then the key number is 30 days. After 30 days, you can wish him Shalom. So the Gemara says, by Shar Kroivim, the Brisa said that if that previous Brisa is talking about Shar Kroivim, it says don't be menachem him at all. But why can't I be menachem him by just saying you should be comforted and don't mention the nifter's name? You just do tanchumen from this in a side, a roundabout way. So the Gemara says, yes, you could do that. Hachinami, there's nothing wrong with that. What does the Brisa mean when it says that after 30 days, don't bring it up anymore? Kedarkoi, in the normal way, saying, so-and-so was a great person, you should have tanchuma, that you shouldn't bring up because it's after 30 days. And it's not a father and mother. But certainly you could talk about it on the side and say you should be comforted on your loss and don't bring up the mace's name. So very straightforward daf, but a nice couple of interesting stories about Tanoim who maintained their composure despite having suffered a tragic loss. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Before you said, way back you said that an oval